The Preparatory Renunciation, the first advanced Bhakti Yoga class, delivered at 228 West 39th Street, New York, on Monday morning, 27th January 1896, and recorded by Mr. Josiah J. Goodwin. We have now finished the consideration of what may be called the Preparatory Bhakti, and are entering on the study of the Para-Bhakti, or Supreme Devotion. We have to speak of a preparation to the practice of this Para-Bhakti. All such preparations are intended only for the purification of the soul. The repetition of names, the rituals, the forms and the symbols, all these various things are for the purification of the soul. The greatest purifier among all such things, a purifier without which no one can enter the regions of this higher devotion, is renunciation. This frightens many. Yet without it, there cannot be any spiritual growth. In all our yogas, this renunciation is necessary. This is the stepping stone and the real center and the real heart of all spiritual culture. Renunciation. This is religion. Renunciation. When the human soul draws back from the things of the world and tries to go into deeper things, when man, the spirit, which has here somehow become concretized and materialized, understands that he is thereby going to be destroyed and to be reduced almost into mere matter, and turns his face away from matter, then begins renunciation. Then begins real spiritual growth. The Karma Yogin's renunciation is in the shape of giving up all the fruits of his action. He is not attached to the results of his labor. He does not care for any reward here or hereafter. The Raja Yogin knows that the whole of nature is intended for the soul to acquire experience, and that the result of all the experiences of the soul is for it to become aware of its eternal separateness from nature. The human soul has to understand and realize that it has been spirit and not matter through eternity, and that this conjunction of it with matter is and can be only for a time. The Raja Yogin learns the lesson of renunciation through his own experience of nature. The Jnana Yogin has the harshest of all renunciations to go through, as he has to realize from the very first that the whole of this solid-looking nature is all an illusion. He has to understand that all that is any kind of manifestation of power in nature belongs to the soul and not to nature. He has to know from the very start that all knowledge and all experience are in the soul and not in nature. So he has at once, and by the sheer force of rational conviction, to tear himself away from all bondage to nature. He lets nature and all that belongs to her go. He lets them vanish and tries to stand alone. Of all renunciations, the most natural, so to say, is that of the Bhakti Yogin. Here there is no violence, nothing to give up, nothing to tear off, as it were, from ourselves, nothing from which we have violently to separate ourselves. The Bhakta's renunciation is easy, smooth-flowing, and as natural as the things around us. We see the manifestation of this sort of renunciation, although more or less in the form of caricatures, every day around us. A man begins to love a woman. After a while, he loves another, and the first woman he lets go. She drops out of his mind smoothly, gently, without his feeling the want of her at all. A woman loves a man. She then begins to love another man, and the first one drops off from her mind quite naturally. A man loves his own city. Then he begins to love his country. and the intense love for his little city drops off smoothly, naturally. Again, a man learns to love the whole world. His love for his country, his intense, fanatical patriotism drops off without hurting him, without any manifestation of violence. An uncultured man loves the pleasures of the senses intensely. As he becomes cultured, he begins to love intellectual pleasures, and his sense enjoyments become less and less. No man can enjoy a meal with the same gusto as a dog or a wolf. But those pleasures which a man gets from intellectual experiences and achievements, the dog can never enjoy. At first, pleasure is in association with the lowest senses. But as soon as an animal reaches a higher plane of existence, the lower kind of pleasures becomes less intense. In human society, the nearer man is to the animal, the stronger is his pleasure in the senses. And the higher and the more cultured a man is, the greater is his pleasure in intellectual and such other finer pursuits. So when a man goes even higher than the plane of the intellect, higher than that of mere thought, when he gets to the plane of spirituality and of divine inspiration, he finds there a state of bliss, compared with which all the pleasures of the senses, or even of the intellect, are as nothing. When the moon shines brightly, all the stars become dim. And when the sun shines, the moon herself becomes dim. The renunciation necessary for the attainment of bhakti is not obtained by killing anything, but just comes as naturally as in the presence of an increasingly stronger light. The less intense ones become dimmer and dimmer until they vanish away completely. So this love of the pleasures of the senses and of the intellect is all made dim and thrown aside and cast into the shade by the love of God Himself. That love of God grows and assumes a form which is called Parabhakti, or supreme devotion. Forms vanish, rituals fly away, books are superseded. Images, temples, churches, religions and sects, countries and nationalities, all these little limitations and bondages fall off by their own nature from him who knows this love of God. Nothing remains to bind him or fetter his freedom. A ship all of a sudden comes near a magnetic rock, and its iron bolts and bars are all attracted and drawn out, and the planks get loosened and freely float on the water. Divine grace thus loosens the binding bolts and bars of the soul, and it becomes free. So in this renunciation auxiliary to devotion, there is no harshness, no dryness, no struggle, nor repression, nor suppression. The bhakta has not to suppress any single one of his emotions. He only strives to intensify them and direct them to God. We see love everywhere in nature. Whatever in society is good and great and sublime is the working out of that love. Whatever in society is very bad, nay, diabolical, is also the ill-directed working out of the same emotion of love. It is this same emotion that gives us the pure and holy conjugal love between husband and wife, as well as the sort of love which goes to satisfy the lowest forms of animal passion. The emotion is the same, but its manifestation is different in different cases. It is the same feeling of love, well or ill-directed, that impels one man to do good and to give all he has to the poor, while it makes another man cut the throats of his brethren and take away all their possessions. The former loves others as much as the latter loves himself. The direction of the love is bad in the case of the latter, but it is right and proper in the other case. The same fire that cooks a meal for us may burn a child, and it is no fault of the fire if it does so. The difference lies in the way in which it is used. Therefore, love, the intense longing for association, the strong desire on the part of two to become one, and it may be, after all, of all to become merged in one, is being manifested everywhere in higher or lower forms, as the case may be. Bhakti Yoga is the science of higher love. It shows us how to direct it. It shows us how to control it, how to manage it, how to use it, how to give it a new aim, as it were, and from it obtain the highest and most glorious results. That is, how to make it lead us to spiritual blessedness. Bhakti Yoga does not say, give up. It only says, love the highest, and everything low naturally falls off from him, the object of whose love is the highest. I cannot tell anything about thee except that thou art my love. Thou art beautiful. Oh, thou art beautiful. Thou art beauty itself. What is, after all, really required of us in this yoga is that our thirst after the beautiful should be directed to God. What is the beauty in the human face, in the sky, in the stars, and in the moon? It is only the partial apprehension of the real, all-embracing divine beauty. He shining, everything shines. It is through His light that all things shine. Take this high position of bhakti, which makes you forget at once all your little personalities. Take yourself away from all the world's little selfish clingings. Do not look upon humanity as the center of all your human and higher interests. Stand as a witness, as a student, and observe the phenomena of nature. Have the feeling of personal non-attachment with regard to man, and see how this mighty feeling of love is working itself out in the world. Sometimes a little friction is produced, but that is only in the course of the struggle to attain the higher, real love. Sometimes there is a little fight or a little fall, but it is all only by the way. Stand aside and freely let these frictions come. You feel the frictions only when you are in the current of the world. But when you are outside of it, simply as a witness and as a student, you will be able to see that there are millions and millions of channels in which God is manifesting Himself as love. Wherever there is any bliss, even though in the most sensual of things, there is a spark of that eternal bliss, which is the Lord Himself. Even in the lowest kinds of attraction, there is the germ of divine love. One of the names of the Lord in Sanskrit is Hari, and this means that He attracts all things to Himself. His is in fact the only attraction worthy of human hearts. Who can attract a soul really? Only He. Do you think dead matter can truly attract the soul? It never did and never will. When you see a man going after a beautiful face, do you think that it is the handful of arranged material molecules which really attract the man? Not at all. Behind those material particles, there must be and is the play of divine influence and divine love. The ignorant man does not know it, but yet consciously or unconsciously he is attracted by it and it alone. So even the lowest forms of attraction derive their power from God Himself. None, O beloved, ever loved the husband for the husband's sake, It is the Atman, the Lord who is within, for whose sake the husband is loved. Loving wives may know this, or they may not. It is true all the same. None, O beloved, ever loved the wife for the wife's sake, but it is the self in the wife that is loved. Similarly, no one loves a child or anything else in the world except on account of him who is within. The Lord is the great magnet, and we are all like iron filings. We are being constantly attracted by him, and all of us are struggling to reach him. All this struggling of ours in this world is surely not intended for selfish ends. Fools do not know what they are doing. The work of their life is, after all, to approach the great magnet. All the tremendous struggling and fighting in life is intended to make us go to him ultimately and be one with him. The Bhakti Yogin, however, knows the meaning of life's struggles. He understands it. He has passed through a long series of these struggles and knows what they mean, and earnestly desires to be free from the friction thereof. He wants to avoid the clash and go direct to the center of all attraction, the great Hari. This is the renunciation of the Bhakta. This mighty attraction in the direction of God makes all other attractions vanish for him. This mighty, infinite love of God which enters his heart leaves no place for any other love to live there. How can it be otherwise? Bhakti fills his heart with the divine waters of the ocean of love, which is God himself. There is no place there for little loves. That is to say, the Bhakta's renunciation is that vairagya, or non-attachment for all things that are not God, which results from anuraga, or great attachment to God. This is the ideal preparation for the attainment of the supreme bhakti. When this renunciation comes, the gate opens for the soul to pass through and reach the lofty regions of supreme devotion, or parabhakti. Then it is that we begin to understand what parabhakti is. The man who has entered into the inner shrine of parabhakti alone has the right to say that all forms and symbols are useless to him as aids to religious realization. He alone has attained that supreme state of love, commonly called the brotherhood of man. The rest only talk. He sees no distinctions. The mighty ocean of love has entered into him, and he sees not man in man, but beholds his beloved everywhere. Through every face shines to him his Hari. The light in the sun or the moon is all his manifestation. Wherever there is beauty or sublimity, to him it is all his. Such bhaktas are still living. The world is never without them. Such, though bitten by a serpent, only say that a messenger came to them from their beloved. Such men alone have the right to talk of universal brotherhood. They feel no resentment. Their minds never react in the form of hatred or jealousy. The external, the sensuous, has vanished from them forever. How can they be angry when through their love they are always able to see the reality behind the scenes?
If you have enjoyed listening to these podcasts from Vedanta Works, please consider making a donation to our Vedanta Works podcast project GoFundMe campaign. Just open GoFundMe.com on your browser and search for Vedanta Works Podcast Project. All donations made in the USA are tax deductible through the Ramakrishna Foundation. All funds will be used to cover the cost of narration, editing, social media marketing, and podcast distribution. Thank you for your continued support.